The night sky glowed an unnatural orange, the kind that makes your heart stop because you immediately know something is terribly, terribly wrong. Smoke curled upward like a scream into the heavens, and the sound of crackling flames devouring wood echoed across the empty road. In front of that inferno stood a little girl, shaking, covered in soot, clutching a burned pillow as if it were the last piece of her world. Her tear-streaked face twisted in agony as she wailed that her house, her only home, had been burned to the ground. Her cry wasn't just loud, it was the kind of pain that claws its way straight into the soul. No one expected that the first people to reach her, to kneel beside her, would be the same men everyone in town avoided, the leather-clad, tattooed members of the Hells Angels. And what happened next would leave the entire town speechless. If you believe in kindness, compassion, and second chances, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. It truly helps us grow and tell more stories that matter. The road was silent except for the rumble of distant engines growing louder, echoing through the night like a warning. But when the motorcycles finally pulled into the smoky clearing, their riders didn't look intimidating, at least not in that moment. Instead, their eyes widened at the sight of the shaking child standing helpless in front of the flames. They weren't expecting this. They were returning from a long ride, the kind that clears a man's mind, but now their thoughts were hit with something else entirely: urgency, fear for a child, anger at whoever had done this. The biggest of the riders, a man with broad shoulders and tattoos that wrapped around his arms like ancient stories, immediately stepped forward. His boots splashed through puddles of melted plastic and water as he reached down and gently touched the girl's shoulder. Her small body recoiled, but then her eyes met his, and something softened. The man wasn't scary anymore. He was safety. The house behind them cracked loudly as the roof began collapsing in pieces. Sparks shot into the sky, lighting up the girl's blonde hair and revealing just how much she had endured before they arrived. Her dress, once pink, was now smeared with black soot and ash. Her pillow, dirty, burned, and half-torn, was the only thing she managed to grab before escaping the flames. One of the bikers looked around for any sign of parents, neighbors, anyone, but the night was empty. No one had come for her. And the moment they realized this, something hardened in their expressions. It wasn't just concern anymore. It was resolve. They moved quickly. Some grabbed fire extinguishers from their bikes, trying desperately to slow the flames. Others formed a protective circle around the girl, shielding her from falling debris and thick smoke. One rider took off his leather vest and wrapped it around her tiny shoulders to keep her warm. They didn't care about how the town labeled them, about the stories people whispered when they passed. In that moment, they were simply human beings answering a child's silent plea for help. And perhaps, deep down, they were also men who had lived through their own versions of pain, loss, and regret. Saving her felt like saving a part of themselves. As minutes passed, they learned her name and pieced together what had happened. She had woken to the smell of smoke, stumbled out of bed, and barely made it outside before the flames grew uncontrollable. There was no sign of her parents, and no one knew whether they had abandoned her, gotten lost, or worse. The bikers refused to leave her side until they understood everything. But instead of interrogating, instead of frightening her further, they simply stayed. They offered her water, warmth, space to breathe. The biggest rider lifted her in his arms when she began shaking uncontrollably, and though she didn't speak, the way she held on to him said enough. When firefighters finally arrived, they found something they never expected: a gang of rough-looking bikers standing guard over a child like she was the most precious thing in the world. Neighbors who had been too scared to approach watched from a distance, whispering among themselves, stunned by what they were seeing. Hours passed, the fire was controlled, and the ashes were all that remained of the little girl's life. When authorities asked the bikers to leave, the tallest one stepped forward calmly and stated that they wouldn't go anywhere until they knew she had somewhere safe to sleep that night. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried enough weight that even the officers knew arguing was pointless. So they stayed. They stayed as she was taken for medical checks. They stayed as her story unraveled piece by tragic piece. And when they learned that she truly had no one, no relatives nearby, no home left, nothing but the clothes she wore, it was the leader of the Hell's Angels who stood up and declared something no one expected. He offered to take responsibility for her, to ensure she would not end up in a broken system or abandoned again. He told the authorities they would protect her, support her, rebuild her life. Not as a gang, not as troublemakers, but as men who remembered what loyalty and honor truly meant. Word spread across town within hours. People were shocked. Some were skeptical. But as days turned to weeks, skepticism turned into admiration. The rough bikers who once caused uneasy glances were now seen repairing the girl's new temporary home, buying her clothes, teaching her how to ride a bicycle, and making her laugh again. They escorted her everywhere, not out of intimidation, but out of genuine care. They attended meetings, court sessions, and hearings just to ensure she never felt alone. And slowly, the girl who once cried in front of a burning house began smiling again. Softly at first. Then brighter. Her transformation changed them too. These men who once lived without purpose beyond the open road now found themselves waking every day with a mission, to give a child back the childhood she lost. They became her guardians, her protectors, her family. And in doing so, they reminded an entire town that kindness doesn't always come dressed in clean clothes or polite smiles. Sometimes it rides a motorcycle, covered in scars and tattoos, but carries a heart bigger than anyone imagined. As the story reached its emotional peak, the girl, now healing, now safe, stood beside the rebuilt home the bikers made for her. Her pillow was new, her dress new, her future brighter. She had lost everything in one night, but found something just as powerful, people who refused to let her face the world alone ever again. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. It truly helps us bring more real, emotional stories to you. Before you go, comment below, kindness still exists.